originating from the podcast studio inside FAM 360's headquarters in Atlanta, Georgia. This is the Above and Beyond Leadership Podcast. The Above and Beyond Leadership Podcast is designed to encourage, equip, and inspire our audience through a combination of inspirational stories and real-life experiences shared by other successful and skilled leaders in a variety of vocations. We hope that the Above and Beyond Leadership Podcast empowers each one of us to step out, step up, and ultimately thrive as leaders. Now here's our host, Mr. Matt Maloney.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Above and Beyond Leadership Podcast. I'm your host, Mr. Matt Maloney. We are graced today by having Laura Story back in the studio with us. If you didn't check out the first episode that we had, part one of our two-part episode here with Laura, please do hit pause, go back, check that episode out. Super rich, really good stuff there. So we were just really grateful for her joining us again today and being able to take time out of her busy schedule. So welcome back.
Well, thanks for having me.
You're welcome. So I thought we would start off today, and in today's episode, we're going to dive a little bit closer into you, your family, so that the audience gets to learn a little bit about who you guys are and part of that journey. But before we get into some of those more deep, questions, I thought we would start off with just some fun questions. So first question, who would play you in a movie about your life?
Jennifer Aniston.
Jennifer Aniston. I love it.
Clearly seeing me, you're like, oh yeah.
No doubt.
No doubt.
Seriously, no doubt.
I would pay her any amount of money.
So if you could go back and choose a different career, what would it be?
Oh, definitely drive a big rig.
Yeah?
Because I think, so as a traveling musician, I don't know if I really would do that. It can't be that family conducive. But as not that that's not an admirable career, because it's fine, but 8 years of college. Well, I guess you could erase the 8 years of college. So okay. Yeah,
okay.
I would erase that. And so part of the traveling musician thing that I love, obviously, is the music, but I love the traveling just as much. I love the truck stops, the roller food.
Yeah,
I love all of it. I would be a great trucker.
Yeah.
I really would be.
That it's funny you said that, because I've oftentimes thought about, I would like to kind of do that. I would like to just get out on the road.
If it doesn't work out.
If this doesn't work out, I'm going that way.
You really should.
But I was inspired by Smokey and the Bandit.
Oh, yes.
Yes. Burt Reynolds, he's kind of near and dear to my heart, because he's also an alumni of where I went to school at Florida State. So
really?
Yeah, he is. All right, well, that's good. Thanks for sharing that. So I thought, again, today we want to get a little more up close and personal. So maybe tell us a little bit about, your life journey with your family. So tell us a little bit about your family first and foremost. And then you had alluded to on a prior episode just a little bit about Martin and his disabilities. And so maybe just segue into that a little bit as well.
Yeah, so Martin and I have been married for 18 years, and we have a 10-year-old daughter named Josie, who is 10 going on 16. She's mini mom, bossing all the boys around. They'll play she'll play a game with them. I'm like, what are y'all doing? I am the queen and they're my servants. And I'll say, hey, how about y'all play something different? And then, so what are you playing? Well, I am the store owner and they are my workers. It's so whatever game they're playing.
Typical first child.
Yes. It's always kind of the same general plot line. And then the twins we have twin boys who are 8 years old, and they are they're different as night and day. And
wow.
but the sweetest boys, but one is just contemplative and compassionate, and the other one is just 0 to 6. Just wakes up going 90 miles an hour.
Wow.
But they're both so fun. And then our youngest is Timothy, and he's 4, and he just kind of goes along.
Yeah.
He's the baby of the family, and he just goes along with whatever. Yeah.
We love the babies.
Yeah.
The babies of the family. Our baby is 9.
But they're still the baby.
But they're still the baby.
Absolutely.
And he gets away with he's always, we have this ottoman at the end of our bed. And I would say that he sleeps on that ottoman too much. Let's just say that. He's sleeping in our room on that ottoman a little too much.
Oh, I know all about it. And even like Timothy has figured out that he gets away with murder. Because I was saying, okay, everyone, this literally yesterday, okay, everyone pick up your laundry and take it up to your room. And the 3 kids, after being squirrely, pick up their laundry. And then Timothy's just standing there. And I was like, Timothy, you too? And he said to me, but I Timmy.
That is awesome.
I'm like, I'll ask him, but I Timmy. Like, we're like, yeah, okay.
What that means, Mom.
We may have spoiled you a little too much. And then it's like, okay, you're right. I'll do it for you.
That happens.
But yeah. So so we have the 4 kids, but even us having any kids at all is somewhat of a miracle. Like I never imagined having 4 kids. But early in our marriage, Martin had some pretty significant health issues, which for a while we just kind of assumed that we wouldn't be able to have any kids. Yeah. So Martin, I told you, married 18 years. It was within the first year and a half of our marriage that Martin started having just some weird health issues and ended up being diagnosed with a brain tumor.
Yeah.
And that, when you're so young, so early on in your marriage, like you're learning, like we did premarital counseling and we learned how to balance the checkbook, how to, try to, alternate holidays with family. They're not teaching you things like how to respond when one of you is diagnosed with a life-threatening illness.
Yeah.
So we had about 5 weeks to prepare from the news when we found out to Martin's surgery. We had about 5 weeks. And I remember sitting down with the doctor and him, telling us about the surgery, telling us about the long list of potential complications, everything from, because of where the tumor is kind of right behind his eyes, it's possible that he could lose his vision completely. Is it possible he could lose his memory completely? And so it came up to the day of the surgery, and we all sat in that waiting room about 4.5 hours. And then, as the spouse, I was the first one who could go back and see him. And I remember going back and seeing him, still hooked up to the different machines. But as soon as his eyes opened, he looked at me and said, "Laura Story." And I thought, oh, I'm so thankful that he remembers me. And then he said, "What are you doing here?" And it was my first realization that he knew exactly who I was, but he had no idea that we were married.
Yeah.
And so that was, it's really...
That was,
pretty weird news to break to your spouse. You've probably never gone through that, Matt.
I have
to
not.
remind your spouse that you're married. And so even just over the next 10 minutes or so, he was asking questions like, "So what have you been doing since high school?"
Yeah, because you guys went to high school together.
Yeah.
Right? Were you high school sweethearts?
We were high school sweethearts.
That's right.
I met him. Little backstory in that I met him at a FCA Fellowship of Christian Athletes event that I had somehow stumbled into. I mentioned earlier that I was in orchestra.
Yeah.
He played baseball and I played bass.
Yeah.
And I still think I probably went there because I wanted to fellowship with a good-looking Christian athlete. And that's where that
was your motivation.
So that's just free advice for anyone who's listening, who's looking for a hot athlete.
There you go.
Yeah, there you go. Who loves the Lord.
You can be in the orchestra and still go to a
there
FCA
you go.
meeting
You
and
can sneak in.
You sneak in.
You can sneak in there. But for me, even in trying to figure, okay, so how do I tell my husband that he's my husband? And I still can't remember exactly what I said to inform him of this, but I'll never forget that very first time of telling him, "I'm here with you because we're married." And he just said, "We're married?" Yes. And I think back to it, it's just this. That's
so great.
The sweetest thing.
That's so great.
And that really, it's so much of who Martin is. A lot of people have asked me, what has it been like the past 16 years of navigating this thing called brain injury? So just to give you a little bit more of the story, we thought we would be there at the hospital for about a week, ended up being there for about 3 months. And Martin was discharged. Then he was taken back because he had complications. And there were moments that we weren't sure whether he was going to make it or not. Yeah. And thankfully, the Lord began to heal his body and restore his health. And then there was the day that we were being discharged. And I was so excited to finally be leaving this hospital. You know, anyone that spent any time with a loved one in the hospital, you know, that terrible fold out chair that you get to sleep in for, you know, night after night. So I was very glad to be going home. But it was already very clear to me that he wasn't exactly the same person that he was before. And I remember asking the doctor, you know, how could you be discharging us when he's not better yet?
Yeah.
And that was probably the first step of even that doctor saying to me, you know, he's been through a lot. And I don't know if this is exactly how he said it, but it was the beginning of me having to change my expectations.
Yeah.
Of, yes, he's not exactly the person he was before, but he's this new person. And so much
This
of
is the new normal for us.
This is the new normal.
Yeah.
Yeah. And even that personality of, yes, we're married. That's Martin. He's very positive and I don't want to paint it. I do not want to paint it to be like that it's been easy. It has been hard, and it still is hard. It's not something that we went through 16 years ago. Navigating a brain injury. He has a short-term memory deficit. He has a vision deficit. He has lifelong health issues that he takes medication for. That there's a whole lot. But navigating a lifelong disability is hard on an individual. It's hard on a marriage. It's hard on a family. I often tell people we limp along. There are a lot of things in life we do slower. A lot of things in life we do different. The way we parent is different. Yeah. We are limping, but somehow we're also thriving. Yeah. Because there's still joy. There's still, I mean, no pun intended, but there's still so many blessings that our family experiences, even in light of our story looking so different than we thought it would.
I mean, maybe in light of the story, right? I mean, maybe because of the story. And I think that's the thing that many even friends of mine that aren't necessarily walking with God in their life, maybe they're not believers, maybe they are, but there's this misconception that, oh, well, you know, if you do all these things and you do the right things and you're following God and that things are just going to be, things are going to be easy and things are going to, well, as we know, it's the opposite, right? And God says that we're going to go through struggles, right? And
that's exactly it.
That's how he brings us in to rely on him, and hence the faith and the hope that we have in him. But that's you know, I don't know personally what that's like in my family because none of us have disabilities, but I have other friends that are in similar situations within their family, and they've said the same thing that you just said, is that we do things a little bit differently. This is our normal, which is different than the other normal. But at the same time, you couldn't imagine how many amazing blessings and things that we have because of this, right? Yeah. That we wouldn't maybe not have even recognized before. Yeah. I wanted to ask you a question about one of your books. So in your book, So Long Normal, you talk about letting go of what's normal and the pursuit of normal. In what ways has that manifested in you personally in your life?
Yeah. I mean, well, thanks for asking, because it's a daily challenge to figure out how to let go of, you know, and whatever your normal is. It could be how you were raised. It could be when you were a kid, how you pictured your life. And even back to what you were saying about the expectation of what being a Christian means. So I was raised in a church, wonderful church, but we had testimony night on Sunday night. And I feel like every testimony night, someone would stand up and say, man, I had this hard thing happen to me, you know, lost my job or whatever it was. And then I just trusted the Lord with it. And all of a sudden, I'm like CEO at Google. Like all of a sudden, I have this brand.
Yeah. I was like, whoa.
Whoa. Yeah. And so I think for a while, I thought that was what being a Christian was. Right. That's what it meant to put my faith in God. Walking through what we've walked through with Martin's disability, I've realized not just That's not what following the Lord means. But it's not even really what the Bible teaches.
No.
But what the Bible teaches is more things like, you have the Apostle Paul. He is talking about, rejoice in the Lord all. He's talking about joy. He's talking about freedom. He's talking about peace. But he's not writing that to his followers from the beaches of Aruba.
That's right.
He's literally writing that from a jail cell.
From prison.
So what you can learn from that is that having faith in God doesn't mean that he's going to make your circumstances turn out the way you think they should. It means more that you can have joy and peace and freedom in life despite how your circumstances turn out.
That's right.
And that's been probably our biggest gain in walking through all of this. And that's been what has made our faith so important as we've walked through it.
Yeah, thank you. That's good. Well, maybe that's a good segue into with those struggles, with those challenges, and how has it impacted or affected you as a leader, and perhaps how you're stewarding, again, through your own experiences in these struggles, how your leadership and your stewardship is, manifesting itself with others that you're leading.
Yeah, that's a great question, because I think at first, whenever you have something hard in your personal life, I don't know if you're this way, but at least I am, my first response is thinking about how it's going to limit me as a leader, not how it's going to enhance me as a leader. Because, whether it's, I need to take some personal days to take care of this, or this struggle has made me less, on at work, and I feel like it limits me. But living with the chronic limitation of, and even with my husband, golly, he could tell you way more than I could as far as things that he's learned from living with disability. But living with disability is part of our family, whether it's as a leader at work or a leader at home. It's the very thing that I thought would limit me. It actually enhances my ability to lead. Some of the truths of the Bible, I'm thinking specifically about Romans 5, where Paul is talking about rejoicing in our suffering. And he says, because suffering produces endurance, and endurance produces character, and character produces hope. Yeah. And so often we want to grow as leaders by taking a class, listening to a podcast like yours, which is all those things are great. Yeah. But if you believe what the Bible teaches, that's not how he always grows us in character. That's not how he always, you think about character and endurance and hope. Those are all things we want as leaders. But what Paul's saying is you can't gain that through going to a conference. No. Only through struggle. Only through suffering. Yeah. It's the refinement, right? It's the iron maker, right? Has to heat up and burn that iron and so that it can be shaped, right? And if I can tell you a quick story about Josie, and it's funny thinking about on a leadership podcast, but honestly, seeing Josie grow as a leader, I was picking her up from preschool. This is when she was 4 years old, and it was we had been out late the night before at some event. So my kids usually come with me for these events, and that's just kind of part of what we do. That's part of your normal. Family, that's part of our normal. And we had gotten in really late, like 3 a.m. late, which technically is early. So but we had gotten in really late, and I'd sent her on to preschool anyway, and I went on to work anyway. And I picked her up, and the teacher says, "Hey, can I speak with you for a second?" And I'm like, oh no. I know exactly where this is going. Yeah, because our Josie she's not an angel. Yeah. She's a sweet girl, but she's no angel. Yeah. But the teacher pulled me aside and said, "Hey, I want to brag on your little girl for a second." And she said, there is a boy who just joined our class a few weeks ago and just has some learning differences. And Josie has somehow took it on herself as her mission to come alongside him, whether it's helping him pack up his lunch to get in line with everybody else at the playground when it's time to go inside. And this is her doing this as a 4-year-old. And I don't tell you this to brag on Josie, because again, she is certainly no saint. But the teacher asked me, she said, "Can you tell me what you have done at home to develop in her heart compassion towards others with disabilities.
Yeah.
And this was, I mean, when she said this to me, you could have knocked me over with a feather, because it was the Lord reminding me that he truly is working all of this together for good. Because we would so often see Martin's disability as one of the greater difficulties in our family. That's what he would say, certainly. But to see that it's the very thing that we felt might discredit us from being parents, that it's that's the very thing he's using to produce character in our children. And I got to tell this teacher, I said, well, I wish I could say that I had that I had done something to teach Josie this. But what you may not know is that Josie's dad has a disability. And so that's been part of her story, is both the good things and the hard things about living with a disabled parent. But it was such a sweet moment for me to see, God is using the very hardest thing in our personal lives to produce that character and endurance in our kids.
You know, we talk about on this podcast, because it's a leadership-oriented podcast, we oftentimes talk about, there's all this scientific research around what are the character traits of great leaders, and if you read, you read online, you read books, I mean, there's vision and empathy and emotional intelligence and all these things, but one of the things that doesn't show up, and it just resonated with me as you were talking through that, is suffering and sacrifice. Yeah. And I think that as I'm hearing that story about Josie and obviously the story about you and Martin and the family, is that that is exactly how God produces character in people. And you have to have walked through, and I did mention this on another podcast, I believe that every leader has to walk through some intense struggle in their life, whether it's lifelong or whether it's a season of life, to gain perspective and how God uses that. And I think that is probably the number one character trait of ultimately great leaders who people will, because they're serving others and people are fun. And that's so good. Well, thank you for sharing that. So I'd like to just close with a final question from you. And that is, do you have any advice from your perspective for other leaders, other people out there that might be listening to this, whether they're going through struggles right now or not, but just through all the experiences that you've had, whether the success, the struggles, the things that you walk through in just your daily life, what kind of advice can you give to us as people seeking, to continue to just thrive in our lives? And
and that's a great question. So yesterday morning, I was listening to one of the pastors of our church share from Jeremiah 1. And he was sharing about when Jeremiah was called as a prophet. And God is saying, I am calling you and I'm sending you here to be my ambassador to these people. And Jeremiah's first response is, Lord, don't call me because I am still young. And God just continues to say, no, I will give you the words. I will show you what to do. And it was a reminder to me of how so often as a leader, fill in that blank. Don't call me because I am still whatever it is.
Right.
And as we were at this, listening to this person teach, I asked the people at my table, I said, what fills in your blank? I can't lead because I am blank. And as we went around the table, one person said, I can't lead because of my past. One person said, I can't lead because I'm just not smart enough. And it was interesting hearing every single person share something. And even it was with a group of people that I know really well, which I'm listening to them share their thing and I'm thinking, no one else at this table is thinking that but you.
Yeah.
But whether it's true about yourself or not, we're so quick to discredit ourselves as leaders based on whether it's something in our past, something in our present. Yeah. When the truth is if you're finding yourself in a leadership position, which I could make a good case for every single person is leading someone.
Without a doubt.
Every single person is leading something or someone. That's not That's not by chance.
Mm-hmm.
Your personal story that you bring along with you is not baggage.
Yeah.
It's not baggage you have to lead around. It's what God is using to equip you to be the leader that he's called to be in that moment. And so I'd say, man, if I could say one thing to people is, the leader that you have in your mind that shows up and puts in 70 hours at the office and has the right answer to everything, that's not the correct picture of a leader.
Right.
A leader is
That's
a
right.
servant leader. A leader is someone who has has the empathy that can only be gained through living some hard life on
That's
their
right.
own.
Yeah.
And leaders come in all shapes and sizes, all different backstories, all different skill sets. And that's been, even as I say this to you, I'm very much in process. I'm someone that I would not have even thought of myself as a leader, maybe even just a couple years ago.
Yeah.
But God's working on me to show me that, I'm not the best leader. I'm not even the right leader for everybody.
Yeah.
But he has equipped me to do the things he's called me to do.
Hey, thank you. That was awesome.
Hey,
I really
thanks for having me.
Yeah.
That means a lot to me.
That was amazing. I just am grateful for what you are doing in the lives of obviously your family, but others through your songs and your books and just your ministry. I'm grateful for that. You've impacted, obviously you know this, but whether you'd like to admit it or not, but you've impacted, millions of people around the world in ways that you will never know, right? Through your music ministry and through your books. And you've had an impact on my family and in ways that you would have never known. And just through your music and other things that we've been exposed to over time. So I thank you for that. And I'm grateful for God and the work that he did. And I'm thankful that he called you to play that upright bass and join that band in college and end up where you're at. So thanks again.
Thank you, Matt,
for joining us. You're welcome. For those that want to learn more about Laura Story, you can find her books and music online. Check out www.laurastorymusic.com. I'd like to close with this quote from one of Laura's songs, from her song Blessings. Because what if your blessings come through raindrops? What if your healing comes through tears? What if 1,000 sleepless nights are what it takes to know you're near? What if trials of this life are your mercies in disguise? And gosh, it's just so powerful. And I think that every single one of us can relate to that and can hold on to that, because that it gives us hope, right? It gives us hope in something that even in the midst of that valley that we're in, we can hope on that is really a blessing for us. And so thank you for that.
Thanks so much.
To all of our subscribers and listeners out in podcast land, I hope today's episode was both empowering and inspirational. Until the next episode, I pray that our daily lives and journeys are filled with opportunities to lift others up as we aim to go above and beyond. Thanks, everybody.
Our executive producer and host is Matt Maloney, President and CEO of FAM360. Strategic Communication Coordinator, Michelle Ducato. Production assistance by Tin Dog Studios. Director, John Berland. Creative Assistant, Whitney Berland. Theme song, Connecting Dots by Curtis Cole, provided by Artlist. Please subscribe today and don't miss any of our weekly episodes.